Welcome to todebate.net, our podcast of debate. My name is Dirk and I'm here with Sebastian. How are you doing, Sebastian?
I'm doing great and I'm well prepared. So I look forward to debating with you on this motion, which is
Whistleblowers should get paid is the motion, and you are for that motion and I'm arguing against the motion.
And we'll follow the same format as usual, 2 minutes each, 3 minutes each, and then 1 minute for concluding remarks.
Okay, let's do this. Sebastian goes first and argues for the motion.
Imagine how much you are earning today on a yearly basis. Do you have the number in your head? You, Dirk, you listeners? Now multiply this number by 10. It's a lot already, isn't it? Multiply it by 100. Wow, it's huge. Okay, let's multiply it by 100,000. Yes, let's multiply the number that you had in your head by 100,000. That's billions of euros or dollars. That's the amount of money one state in Germany recovered from tax evaders thanks to a CD of data it bought. Billions of euros, only in one state in Germany. Purchasing this CD was clearly worth it, and without it, it would have been impossible to go after the fraudsters. Well, you are paying your taxes like a good citizen, aren't you, right? Paying for this CD was for the greater good, and the means in this case justified the end. The means were paying whistleblowers and middlemen. But that's not the end of the story. What happened to the Swiss banker who leaked and sold the data? He got prosecuted for infringing on bank secrecy laws. Getting paid for whistleblowing is therefore not incompatible with the fact that one remains liable for how the information was gotten. What's great about paying whistleblowers is that it can come at no cost to a company or a notion. It can be a percentage of the sums which were recouped. It can be possibly capped, and even a minimum of amount that has to be recouped can be inserted as a clause. Many countries have already implemented this reward scheme, notably the UK, but not only. There's also Hungary. There's also South Korea. And in this cases, the reward programs go up to, in the case of the UK, £100,000. And it's not available if the person is involved in the cartel. No publicity is required either. The actual whistleblowing and the reward can be kept confidential. It's probably even better for both the whistleblower and for the company in which this is happening. So my stance is, let's pay whistleblowers.
And now on to Dirk. Let's hear his argument.
All right, let's start by defining a term here, Sebastian. A whistleblower is someone who informs the public about unlawful and unmoral behavior in organizations. It is about ringing the bell on misconduct and about enforcing moral standards. The guy you mentioned, and now I jump on it anyway, the guy you mentioned selling that CD, the banks he stole the data on that CD from, they weren't doing something wrong. He's damaged his employers, stealing data, then selling to a government official body. That's just stealing and making money out of it. But anyway, we do tend to think about people that do big things like that one. Or like Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning. But there are countless examples of whistleblowers at much, much smaller level. In the end, it boils down to an upstanding citizen insists on moral and legal conduct and reports misconduct accordingly to authorities. And sometimes the public, if the authorities don't care, or are the ones perceiving doing the misconduct. And now I wonder, why should we pay someone for doing the right thing? I'm all for praising, protecting, supporting such folks. In fact, we should pass laws that protect them. But no one should expect a salary for being an ethical member of the society. I'm not getting paid when I report burglary. I'm not getting paid when I stop someone from robbing a granny's purse. And I don't think I should get paid if I report gross misconduct in my company, my club, my political party. All of them should perceive to certain standards and hold up certain morals. And I'm, as a member of society, should feel inclined to do that. Why? Because it turns moral into a business. That is why. Why? Because it weakens the reports. Because people could argue you only did it for the money. Why? Because it turns normal people into paid spies, and that kills trust. And now I stop here and let you explain to me why that should be a good thing.
Now it's Sebastian's turn. Let's hear his rebuttal.
I do think we're talking about the same thing in terms of misconduct of tax evaders. And actually, in this case of the banks, they also did wrong things. In fact, most of these banks got into trouble and received huge fines in the US. So for a lot of tax evasion, not necessarily for the German case, but related to it. Now, let's address some possible concerns that you've raised. The concern of generating mistrust because you would be paying whistleblowers. This is a bit surprising because the mistrust is already there. There's no need to hide it in a false or fake manner. And I insisted on saying we don't have to make the whistleblowing public or even say that the reward was given. Nobody needs to know. This is entirely up to the authorities or to the law to define how it should be handled. But the mistrust is already there in the first place if people are thinking of denouncing it. Now, you could argue that why go to the authorities instead of maybe internally reporting things to a company, for instance? Well, sometimes it's not possible to report things internally. We both work in a big company. Our listeners most likely also work in companies for most of them, and they probably know that sometimes reporting things to human resources or to an ethics line is maybe not the way that they feel the most comfortable about. It's a shame, but honestly think about it and whether you've been thinking twice about doing it or not. And the fear of retaliation is something that people have. Authorities can also push back accordingly and say, you know what, this is an internal matter. We don't handle this. It is up to them to decide afterward. The police can decide to push back. Now, you're talking about the wrong incentive. So what? Let's assume it could be morally wrong to pay someone. But the thing is, it is legally wrong to fraud and evade taxes. It is legally wrong. So I don't care so much about morals and who's defining morals here when there's actually some huge fraud going on and we're talking about billions of euros. I'm not talking about a granny's purse or a robbery. I insisted that it could depend on the amount, right? If the amount recovered, let's say, does not have a minimum of 1 million or 1 billion euros, then no one gets paid. Most people anyway, studies have shown, don't do this for the money in any case. Some people do, and I don't care if it's their incentive because it is for the greater good at the end of the day. Now, I have additional points. An investigation is still required. It's not because a whistleblower will denounce something that there is something wrong happening. They think there is something wrong happening. It's only information. You're not paying anyone to get information in this case. The payment comes after the fact. And it doesn't make anyone guilty yet. You have to have a proper investigation. And I'll come back on this compensation aspect because it's not really a reward. For spending time with authorities for damages in case of likely retaliation and your reputation is at risk, you denounce something. How do you think other companies will react? They don't have to hire you. They will never say it's because you have blown the whistle. But in effect, you're actually paying a huge price for it. And spending that time with authorities for an investigation, you're not going to get compensated for it. So overall, I think concerns are completely misplaced. We're trying to combat crime, and this is just one tool in this arsenal of weapons we can use to combat crime.
Dirk, let's hear it.
Yes, we definitely need to protect whistleblowers. So we can agree on that. Whistleblowers are in danger of retaliation, and probably the losses they encounter may outweigh the benefit they may even get by paying them. But compensating for the losses is by any means not only a matter of money. We actually need much more than that. How about strengthen the laws to protect journalistic sources, for instance? By recognizing that someone who is a whistleblower may fear retaliation. That's step number one. Step number two is recognizing that the paper publishing that stuff fears retaliation too. And maybe the government official bringing something out in the open. So by pulling that into a official process, and of course, even no one needs to know, that there need to be laws around that. People can read laws. If you know there are regulations and laws in place that give you at least potentially money for in exchange for whistleblowing, that you have your incentive right there. And it's not the one whistleblower who brings back billions of dollars. How many billions of dollars do you think Edward Snowden brought back? Actually, you could make an argument that he costs dearly in terms of financial resources. How much money did the NSA had to invest in order to overcome additional measures of protection after Edward Snowden blew the whistle? How much do you think it was damaging to governmental agencies that Chelsea Manning leaked the data to WikiLeaks? So it's not the financial side of thing. What you're arguing for is giving people money for helping you finding tax fraud, finding misconduct that costs money to states. But whistleblowing is a much higher, much more moral thing than that. Second thing, the number of reports we can gather, may increase. Maybe that is true. I just doubt that we like to pay the price, because the price is simply the loss of trust and a general suspicion on every employee to be a potential spy, because that is what it boils down to, a form of espionage. If you pay people to compromise information, it starts very fast to smell like a crossover of blackmail and espionage. Thirdly, I sense a troubling double standard here. All discussion and articles I found discuss paying whistleblowers in corporate contexts. As I mentioned earlier, that would certainly mean things like Elron. That feels a bit out of whack though, because that's not the number one issue that we battle when we talk about whistleblowing. Often it's more official and governmental misconducts. I have a feeling that in the Trump administration there will be plenty of whistleblowers, and I also have a feeling that they won't be paid by their government to do that, even though we pass legislation on that. So let's stop that. Let's just drop that idea. It's just not working. It's not moral. It's not useful. And on the other hand, where would it stop? How about we offer divorced partners a bonus if they report their access for, say, tax fraud as well? Maybe that's billions of dollars too.
Final statements. Sebastian goes first.
Let me be clear. I'm only talking about a reward or compensation if in the case of financial crimes, when there's money to be recouped, not to pay them as a part of a fund of some kind. Protecting journalistic sources, I don't think that's the debate. I'm completely in favor of protecting sources. You mentioned Edward Snowden. I'm not suggesting for him to get paid as such. In fact, no money was recovered in that case. You said it cost more. Well, I think it was justified that it cost more for the NSA and everything else, because there were new surveillance laws which did change as a result. And when people got aware that they were being monitored in a way that was probably unlawful and illegal. The system of paying whistleblowers, especially in the case of financial crimes, also already works in some countries. As I mentioned, the UK is one, South Korea is another. And information is crucial. And sometimes without that money incentive, you will not get that information. And that incentive can be capped. It's more of a compensation anyway. It costs nothing if it's part of recouping money. Do you want to let crime go unpunished? I don't think so. And for that, paying whistleblowers provides us with another way to take crime down.
Dirk.
Of course, I do want to get crime punished. But I also do want to have a model where people solve their problems internally first. And I don't want to have a system that incentivizes espionage or, as we call it, whistleblowing right now. And I think these rules are easy to misuse. I think it incentivizes the wrong idea. I believe if something is to happening that deserves to blow the whistle on, then people should do that out of a moral compass, out of ethics, out of a personal drive. And as the example of Edward Snowden shows, that in fact is independent from any financial incentive. Edward Snowden risked a lot in that spectrum, and he did it nonetheless. So did Chelsea Manning. She went to jail for 7 years over blowing the whistle. So I'm not sure if we're incentivizing the right thing by paying whistleblowers. I think so. On the other hand, we need to protect them from retribution because the risk is very severe. So that's it. That was today's debate then. Let us know what you think, dear listener. Should whistleblowers get paid? Should we do other things? Are you for or against that motion? Don't forget to go to our webpage, todebate.eu, and let us know by clicking on the voting function. We analyze who changed the opinion based on our debate, and that is how we determine who won the debate, Sebastian or me.
Thank you very much for listening. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah, so by the way, there were two things here at once. I had that CD thing that I went off on. that is, I think that's not whistleblowing. So in my book, that's just someone stealing from his employer and making money out of that. And I was really, really angry back in the day that we, as a German government, and we did do that several times. We bought like 3 of those CDs.
I know.
And it's just putting financial reward over moral standards. That's why I'm getting angry at that. It's just saying, fuck our values, there are billions to get. and this is, this is
That this Swiss guy actually got in trouble. I did not know this. The Swiss banker, I did not know he got in trouble. Like, he was not protected. Like, he sold the stuff. He stole the data, as you say, but he was not protected in any way. And actually, that's why I was, and this is probably why in the UK it's the same thing. If you are involved in the cartel or whatever, you're not eligible for any kind of compensation.
Because you told me so many times that after those weeks you're prepared up to the roof that I got scared and started writing things down. And it's, of course, that's tactics, that's psychological warfare that you're doing with me.
Of course.